Hi, Callan for 74XX back with another arcade PCB repair. Two in fact, because we've got a Sega double shot, two PCBs that probably have the same problem, but will need to be fixed in two different ways. Let's get started. So today we're looking at a pair of Sega boards. They're both on the same kind of console called the System 16B. And this really contained a lot of the games that would eventually become Sega Genesis classics, like Altered Beast, Golden Axe, and Shinobi. Let's take a look at the boards. So we've got Golden Axe over here, and this is a game called Flashpoint, which is kind of a Tetris clone. These are both System 16B boards, as I mentioned, and the lower board is kind of the motherboard, and the top board is the ROM board, which can be changed to change the game. However, you got to match it with an encrypted CPU like this one here. So this is from Hitachi. It's called an FD1094. For sound, we have a Z80, we have an NEC 80PCM processor for speech and things like that, and we have a YM2151 synthesizer. This synth is very similar to what's on the Sega Genesis, but this one is better. Our system RAM is over here. We've got lots of filters for all the inputs here. This will be a video processor. And to be frank, I don't really know what's under these ROM boards because this motherboard is built so well, they almost never seem to break, besides what we're going to fix today. If you see one of these in good condition, there's a really good chance it's going to work fine. So because we have one existing FD1094 on the Flashpoint, and we have no processor present on the Golden Axe, we're going to have to decide how we want to proceed because there's two ways to solve this problem. The FD1094 is an encrypted processor that has a 2032 battery in it, and the battery goes and it loses the encryption key. It doesn't work anymore and will just give you a black screen. Now there's two ways of solving this. One is actually to open up the FD1094, replace the battery, and program the keys back in for the game that you want to use, or replacing it with a standard 68000 processor and then changing the ROMs to decrypted versions that exist now. So since we have two boards and only one FD1094, I figured it would be a great chance to try both solutions. Now on the Golden Axe, there are quite a few ROMs present, whereas on the Flashpoint there's barely any. And if I made the decision to put a standard 68000 in this one, I would have to replace these four ROMs, and they are actually a little bit different than standard ROMs. These ones over here are called 27C1000 or 27C301. And they're almost identical to 1 megabit EEPROMs that you'd be used to, except they have pin 2 and 24 reversed, I believe. And that is to match the pinout of the mask ROMs, which are the ROMs that are burned at the factory and you can't erase them or rewrite them. To be perfectly honest, I'd rather just burn 2 decrypted ROMs here rather than 4 over here. So I'm going to actually reprogram this CPU to work on this board. Then I'm going to put standard 68000 in this slot and then just replace those two ROMs, which appear to be standard 27C512 ROMs. So I'm going to start with the Flashpoint. I'm going to remove the CPU block just like that, and we're going to keep it with this board and deal with that a little bit later. I want to start by figuring out what speed of 68000 CPU I'm going to need for this Flashpoint. So initially I went to the system16.cpp file in the MAME source code, but this is actually just bootlegs. This isn't even the right driver for the actual Sega System 16B games. The correct driver is actually called Sega S16B, and you can see all the different games it has here. According to the PCB layout, the 68000 is running at 10 megahertz. This is a bit strange here. It says Motorola MC 68000P8 CPU, which I believe means 8 megahertz. It says it's running at 10 megahertz. Yeah, so indeed the 68000P8 runs at 8 megahertz, not 10. So it's either a mistake that it's a P8 or it's not actually running at 10 megahertz. It's saying that it's 20/2, and indeed I can see that the crystal oscillator is 20 megahertz. In the machine driver here, it does say M68000 master clock 10 megahertz. So my conclusion has to be that there was a mistake in the MAME driver and it was not a 68000 P8 but a P10. Although I really do think in the past I've put P8s into these boards before and had no problem. Although just like today with say a new like Intel or AMD CPU, CPUs back in the day could be overclocked. You can run them at a higher speed and they may work, they may not. So it's entirely possible that a lot of the 8 megahertz rated ones will still work fine at 10 megahertz. I'm going to be using a actual Motorola M68000 P10. I think it's from 1990, and it's going to go in just like this. That was simple. Now we'll look and see what ROMs we have to replace. Now I know that this section is for the program ROM, so I'm going to look for this number 12591B. 12591B. Here we go. Flashpoint. And there's the number that we just matched. It is indeed a 27C512. And if we look here at the main CPU, it is just those two that we have to replace. The one at A7 and the one at A5. On a System 16B board, you only have to replace the main CPU ROMs. None of the other ones are encrypted. Graphics, sprites, sound, PLDs. So it's only these two that we have to replace with the decrypted versions. That's A5 there and A7 there. As usual, I'm not going to show you where you can actually get any ROMs, but they are floating around. Now, 27C512 chips are new enough that I'm comfortable to program them directly on the T48 programmer rather than using one of my old school ones. I got a blank one here. Let's verify that. Okay, I'm loading the file for the ROM at A5 program. Second one is a different manufacturer. It's an ST. Now I'll load A7 program. And that was successful. Let's get them back on the board. Let's pull this out of A5. Pop in our decrypted one. Pop out A7. Now this connector looks a lot like JAMA. It's the right number of pins, and it has the ground, two grounds, two 5 volts, and then two grounds over here. So casual look, you might think this is actually JAMA, but it's not. Sega System 16 is a little bit different. So I've got my adapter already hooked up to my JAMA test rig here. This is another adapter by PCB Junkie, who makes great adapters. All right, let's check it out. Okay. This must be the Japanese version. I'm going to ignore that warning. All right, I think we're working. Do we have any sound? Oh, we do. Good. Put some coins in here. Start it up. Oh, look at like Fantasy Zone guys there. That's cool. All right. Well, yeah, as I said, it's like a Tetris game. Back when everybody was trying to improve on Tetris. Okay, so simple as that. This game is back up and running. Like I said, these boards are usually rock solid, so I didn't expect to have any more problems than that. But this was the easy one, so let's move on to the Golden Axe now, where we're going to actually replace the battery in the CPU block. So for Golden Axe, we're going to crack this open and replace the battery. Now, instructions have been around for a long time in how to replace these batteries because, say, 10-15 years ago, it would still be common to find these working and just have the knowledge that you need to change the battery before it finally runs out. So what you do is crack it open, you would attach a secondary battery in parallel so that it doesn't lose its encryption key, desolder the first battery, put in your new replacement, then desolder the extra one, and then zip it all back up. These days, batteries are long dead and the encryption keys are long gone. So let's start by getting this battery replaced. So there is actually just like a lid on top of here. I have no idea if this is going to be hard to do or what. Okay, yeah, this actually isn't like stuck down too bad at all. Okay, no problem. Adhesive isn't that good. Come on. Okay, so that's actually a thin piece of metal on top. All right, so quite simple inside. I can see that the top one is positive, bottom one is negative, and that extra wire is the ground that goes to that top piece of metal. So let's get this off of here. Oh, it is indeed two separate pieces of wire. Okay. And the positive. Now, let's see, is this also, nope, comes out nice and easy. No problem. That is a 2032 from 1989. Didn't leak though, which is great. Now, I actually have these on hand because I also like to work on old synthesizers like music keyboards, and these also often use this. Leaded 2032s. All right, so I'm gonna pop that right back in there. Get some solder on that lead. That's solid. And the negative one's kind of far away, but that's all right. I'm gonna flatten this out. Then I'm gonna use that extra piece of wire to extend it. So that back on there, that there. No problem. Then we'll get it on here. That's a nice solid connection. So make sure that is connected. It is. Gonna lift a bit of this metallized tape here. It can be kind of hard to see. I'm going to sneak that wire back under some of the adhesive tape. I don't think this is really necessary, as long as it's not going to short to the positive side. I don't think there's any trouble with this. And the adhesive is still good enough to be resealed. Alright, so our FD1094 should be back in business. Of course, it has no encryption keys in it, so we'll do that next. So the hardware and software I'm about to use were all created by Arcade Hacker, who have been doing decryption and decapping of some chips for arcade boards for a long time now. Here's their page, arcadehacker.blogspot.com. I'll link it in the description below. This takes you through all the pieces you need to get, includes Gerber files for the adapter to actually plug it into an Arduino Mega, which is the microcontroller used for this project. Also gives you the information on how to configure the Arduino software and how to choose the game. So here's my sandwich here. I've got the Arduino Mega board on the bottom. I have the Arcade Hacker Sega System 16 Hitachi FD programmer in the middle, and I just popped the FD1094. You can kind of see it says Flashpoint there on top. So let's plug it in. So I already have my Arduino Mega chosen. It's on COM4, it detects it, that's great. And essentially there's a big list of all the different versions of the encryption key that can be chosen. We're gonna go down here and find Golden Axe. Now to be honest, I'm not sure which one we need between Golden Axe 1, 3, J, or U. So if we look at the board again, we have EPR 12539, 519, 540, and 521. So let's go find those in the MAME driver. So these four EPROMs, 40, 39, 21, and 19, do match what I have on the board. So this is actually a Golden Axe J, Japanese version. With the Arcade Hacker Sega FD1094 program loaded, I'm going to find Golden Axe J, which is right here, and I'm going to remove these two slashes to uncomment them. And now this is the encryption key that's going to be sent in. So I will uploaded successfully to the Arduino Mega. Now I'm going to open a serial monitor. There we go, we are communicating with the board now. So we only have a couple options here. I did realize that you have to change this little option down here. It defaults to new line. Got to make sure it's on carriage return, otherwise your command won't work. So I'm simply going to type a W and send. And that's it. It's done writing just like that. So now the encryption keys for Golden Axe J should be back in the 1094 with a fresh battery that should keep it alive for another 15 to 20 years. Okay, so let's extract our CPU and return it to the board. Being extremely careful not to break any pins, because I don't know how you would reattach any pins to this thing. Okay, that felt good. Okay, fingers crossed. Let's turn it on. Ooh, black screen. That's not what we wanted. Okay, so we got nothing on this one. Let's return the FD1094 block to the Arduino and see if we can dump the same key back and figure out if it's stuck properly in the CPU. Just relaunched the serial monitor to make sure I'm in a fresh session. If I type V, it says dumps and compares a parity bit for all encryption data bytes stored in the 1094 chip. This will basically tell me if a valid encryption key is in the 1094. So V, send. So this is saying a lot of no matches, so I think this is not working. Let's try writing it and then immediately verifying it. Yeah, so there's no errors here, so it seems like it is writing it correctly. I'm gonna remove power from this for a second, and let's plug it back in and try a verify again. All right, so at this moment, it actually seems like it has kept the encryption key just fine. Okay, let's try it in the board again. Okay, let's try again. Yep, black screen. So it's definitely not working. I mean, it could be something else, but I'm pretty confident it's gonna be an issue with the CPU blocks. Let's try and verify it again, see what happens. V for verify. Okay, yeah, it's not working. Now, I don't believe the board has any ability to destroy the key or anything like that, so I'm just gonna check on the battery again and see if something is amiss. Okay, popping that open again. Well, first let's see if the battery is any good. Oh, well the battery's only at 2.4. That's not very good. Check my other one here. Okay, so here's another one. It's at 3.3. I don't know. Maybe that just got discharged really fast somehow. Yeah, that's like a bad battery, so that might just be luck of the draw. I don't know. Okay, let's try this again. This one is actually reading above 3 volts, so should be fresher. Okay. Okay, so that's reading 3.3. Okay, good. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay, write. No problem. And verify. Everything looking good. Okay, third time's a charm. Yeah, there we go. I'm getting the controller out for this. By the way, I use a Neo Geo home console joystick anytime I actually want to play something on my test rig. Oh, got sound too. All right, and naturally the dwarf. Everyone knows the dwarf is the best, right? Oh, that's neat. I hadn't seen that before. It looks like it's English dialogue with Japanese subtitles at the bottom. How interesting. Golden Axe was one of the first games I ever actually had in an arcade machine. And in fact, now that I think about it, back in the day, the first JAMA adapter I ever made, and I had to wire it by hand, was for Golden Axe. A Sega System 16 to JAMA adapter. I actually had to call Sega, and they actually did forward me to the guy who would have this information, and verified a couple things about the pinout with me. Try one of my bombs here. Nice. Glad I didn't kill that villager who was just trying to escape. This really is better as a two-player game. So in conclusion for these two boards, we had two games that had basically the same problem, which is that their CPUs were no longer working. One of them, we had an FD1094, we replaced the battery and reprogrammed the encryption key using all the excellent work that the other enthusiasts have put together over the past decades. And with the other one, we put in a standard 68,000 chip and replace the two program ROMs with decrypted versions. But with these two games fixed up and working 100%, my work is done, and I'll see you next time.